Hi, I'm Rin from Open Forest Protocol. I'm heading community development, and I will be talking about why the world needs decentralized MRV, though I may be preaching to the choir today based on our conversations yesterday. I am still excited, and I'd like to maybe start off to set the tone with a video if it's ready. I'm gonna give the cue like this.
How do we keep all forests open? Why is what we measure what we value? We measure trees, and we value a moment from the moment of truth. The location of a tree is permanent. Data reporting a tree is a permanent truth. To keep a forest open, you need to be able to say that your trees are growing. They are healthy. And they're sequestering carbon. In a centralized MRV program, you will not have access to this data unless you have a large area of land and a large budget. The Open MRV is the world's first and only Web3 native decentralized MRV, accessible to every small or large forest, and it's transparent. You can manage your trees and data independently. No fees to join or to operate. A network of validators will be ready to validate your truth. Everyone in the world will be able to see the value in your forest. That value can be biodiversity, because you care about conservation, or it can be carbon sequestration, because you care about forestation. All values are equal to the Open MRV. The Open Carbon methodology will become a new world standard. It will scale every forest value in a permanent, open system update of this world.
Great, thank you. So the question today is why the world needs decentralized MRV, or as you would have seen in this video just now, why the world needs open MRV. Yesterday, I don't know if many of you were present, but there was a very lively roundtable discussion on tokenized carbon, which touched upon a lot of challenges and potential we see for the space. One thing I think we all identified as underpinning the discussions on the markets was the scaling of supply of high-quality carbon credits. What keeps us from this right now is the bottleneck created on the MRV side. MRV meaning measurement, reporting, and verification of the data that comes from these carbon removal projects. That is to say, the proper measurement and accounting of impact as such. It is indeed the maxim that you cannot prove what you do not measure. Whether it is carbon, verifying impact, transparent accounting, financing of more carbon removal projects, it all starts with MRV. So today I want to share Open Forest Protocol's contribution to this massive problem, our contribution to the so-called DMRV space as one of the first fully Web3 native MRV solutions. If we start a little bit with why forests and the forest in Open Forest Protocol, at OFP, we envision a future in which trees and nature at large lead our response to climate change. I don't want to overstate the role of forests in getting us to a decarbonized future, but regardless of the numbers for carbon removal forests can achieve, forestation is nonetheless a powerful means of ecosystem restoration. Not only do trees have the peculiar nature of absorbing carbon dioxide, but they also ensure biodiversity, habitation, and resources for multiple forest-dependent species and the human communities around them. So planting trees and conserving them matter because they actively mitigate and rectify the negative changes of climate change. And hence you see so many NGOs, companies, and governments today pledging to plant more trees or restore forest cover. But it is not enough that one plants trees. You have to measure the impact you're creating, monitor that your forests haven't burned down, that they grow healthily and aren't diseased. You also have stakeholders like donors, investors, maybe governmental bodies that want to know where their funds are going, that you are indeed doing what you're saying you're doing with their funds. For all of this, you need to be able to verify these claims as legitimate. What adds weight to the importance of MRV is that forests sequester carbon, and there is a market in which you can trade the certifications or certificates for the proof of sequestration. This in turn creates an additional demand and necessity for better collecting, reporting, and use of data from these forests. Because you have to not only calculate how much carbon is being sequestered, but also have to establish systems of checks and balances so that we don't have situations like these. Just one example, this is published through a study by ProPublica. One example project in Cambodia that had been issued 48,000 tons of carbon credits in advance in 2008. They monitored that land area in 2017. It turned out already 46% of the area was, only 46% of the area was still forest. One parcel being entirely deforested. It was due to a civil war that was going on, and a lot of the land had been replaced with urban areas. So without rigorous MRV, without full transparency of what happens on the ground, we render all good intentions futile. To reiterate, it all starts with MRV. So we need more forests, people want to plant more trees, and we need MRV to do that sustainably and effectively. The question really comes down to speed and scale. Time is not on our side when it comes to climate change. Right now, both forest project development and carbon markets are plagued with inefficiencies due to the fact that we are dealing with a closed system when it comes to MRV. Today, we rely on basically 2 to 3 main bodies to have your project certified and accredited for carbon. So to illustrate, let's say you want to develop a forest project. This is what an example of a current process would look like. This is an example, This is an example of the process at Gold Standard. I'm not going to go through all of this for the sake of time, but I'll point out some of the things that may be particularly interesting. So for instance, there's a long process in order to get to the verification stage to begin with. One of the things is the minimum requirement for your land size. So developers will typically not work with projects under 3,000 acres or 1,200 hectares. You also have to probably take away 3 to 50% of the value generated from your projects to these developers for their services. Methodology-wise, you have to apply and register and use one of their registered methodologies. And then a single gatekeeping independent third party so they send specialized agents to your field in order to collect data. So it's very labor intensive. It also drives up the cost of the MRV process. And then you need to have a independent third party to verify the findings of this development. So it's a very long and arduous process just to get there, very time-consuming and very not much cost-effective for projects that don't meet the 1,200-hectare requirement. A lot of projects can still apply, but they will not do it because there is a curve when it comes to forest projects and profitability. If you don't get to at least the 1,200-hectare minimum requirement, you simply are not going to break even on your forest project, at least when you're using MRV through the legacy system. To kind of quickly do a rundown of a comparison between the legacy MRV system and what OFP is trying to do, which is a decentralized MRV model. The verification costs in the legacy system averages about 50K. I am understanding that about 15 to 20% of your total forestation budget goes towards MRV. Number of entities verifying a project 1, minimum project size 1,200 hectares, time to verification 2 years or more, landowner equity bottom of waterfall, Credit transparency, opaque. Project verification happens every 3 to 4 years. So in sum, what I'm trying to deliver is that the time, cost, resources, and centralization involved in the legacy system means first and foremost a lack of access to the existing system from most forest project owners. It also means for existing projects or new projects that are eligible for the process, a slower timeline and worse equity, which also affects long-term sustainability of their projects. This results in the failure to scale. When we look at the data layer, we are dealing with centralized data on centralized servers, manual counting of projects, carbon credits, and their statuses. The questions arise due to this of double counting, double spending, and origination, all of which point to the lack of transparency and suboptimal accountability and trust in the current systems. And then all of this in turn affects the financing side of things, whether it is because projects are barred from access to carbon financing or cannot ensure investor confidence, or the returns are simply not profitable enough. This then turns around to affect the scaling of forest-based climate solutions by making it economically less competitive than deforesting an area to use for agriculture or grazing. So the current system creates an MRV bottleneck. Vera and Gold Standard, just to give a brief overview, together have verified less than 250 forest projects during their entire existence. We simply need alternatives to help scale things and move things along more efficiently. So when we say the answer lies in decentralizing MRV, what does it mean to decentralize something? It is in essence the idea of taking power and means away from a single entity and distributing among various locuses or centers. In that way, you bring the power back to the actual parties involved. This is how decentralized technology is tied to the values of openness, autonomy, empowerment, and democratization. When we say let's decentralize MRV, we mean let's open up this closed system, establish a distributed network, or a community rather, as opposed to centralized bodies, and thus bring back the tools and power back to the actual forests and the people managing them. At OFP, we say we decentralize MRV, or rather open up the current closed system through a communal approach to the verification of forest data. Here is how the OFP MRV process works. Forest operator registers their project on OFP. The forest project operator sets up their monitoring zones and sample points, which is then registered on-chain as an NFT. Field agents assigned to a specific forest plot go into the field, they record the height, circumference, geolocation, and pictures of the sample points using our mobile app. Once all the necessary field data has been collected, the forest project operators send the data to validators. And we have a network of validators who bring satellite, drone, GIS, LiDAR technology in order to cross-reference the data from the ground and the data that they are getting from their technology to verify these claims. And then the entire validation history, which happens every 6 months in the beginning and then annually from then on, is recorded transparently and immutably on-chain for anyone to see, whether it's the next validator in the next validation period, or it's the general public who wants to actually verify that trees are being planted and the claims made are true. So by bringing MRV on-chain, by decentralizing its process through a network of stakeholders, we open up the bottlenecks in the current MRV system. This answers the question why the world needs decentralized MRV in 3 points, I would say. So the first point is opening access. So through decentralizing MRV, we're able to open access to the MRV system. The main bottleneck outlined before was that the current system is in effect not allowing small to mid-sized landowners or project owners a seat at the table and discouraging new forest projects from being created. When we look at the forest projects that have committed to using OFP, we get a chart that looks like this. As you can see, most of our projects have a land site that falls far below the 1,200 hectare minimum requirement we see in legacy processes. In fact, our smallest projects are actually 0.25 hectares or 0.48 hectares. We have even a regenerative agriculture project in India, which is only 0.02 hectares. Projects that would have not qualified for Vera or Gold Standard now have access to a free-to-use MRV platform, which they can use with minimal requirements. All you need is a phone, which you can download the mobile app, some internet connection when you need to upload that data, to not only better take care of their projects, but also attract donors and investors through verifiable impact reporting and potentially access carbon financing. So that's how we're opening access. The second answer for why we want to decentralize MRV is that it opens truth. By opening truth, we mean that in utilizing blockchain technology and building systems which code in conditions and incentivize mechanisms for truthfulness, we are making the factual truths of forests about them being there, that trees are planted, that they have not been wiped out, are open to all. Openness should be the modus operandi of all decentralized MRV systems. Your MRV methodology should be open for review. Your code has to be open source, and more than anything, as a database, every data point recorded and verified should be immutably, transparently, and publicly stored for all to see, attached to the unique identity of each project. So we no longer say, trust us because we have authority and we have expertise, but trust only the data itself. Our layer of truth is open and accessible to all so that you can verify the data for yourself and see if this is true or not. Finally, with MRV as the fundamental layer, we are able to envision a new paradigm for an economy based in nature. For instance, we envision a results-based financing platform called Open Forest Starter, where we would be able to connect all the projects on our platform with the potential donors or investors who are interested in pre-financing these projects and execute the payments automatically via smart contracts based on the delivery of impact goals. So this may be after planting how many seedlings that they promised to, after producing how many carbon credits, or after X period of time. It is ultimately the idea that through the decentralization of MRV, we are able to enable financing for nature in ways that were previously unavailable. And with the help of the creativity and mobility of capital that DeFi enables, we will be able to build in a system which economically incentivizes the regeneration of nature rather than its exploitation, and build this into our transactions, our assets, and our wallets. Fundamentally, this means a paradigm shift, a reevaluation of our human relationship to nature altogether. In short, we argue that the world needs decentralized MRV to open what is closed, access, truth, and consciousness. We need to disrupt and break in order to open what is currently closing off the potential and necessity that forests have in mitigating climate change. And our part is in providing the means to do that. At this point, I'd like to share that in the following week, OFP will go live on mainnet to make the first step in realizing all of the vision outlined above. Our phase 1 will be launching in phases. Our phase 1 will concern the mobile app and the dashboard for project operators, and it'll be launching next week. During this time, we will be onboarding about 16 of the total 50 projects committed to OFP around the world, and they will have a 6-month window to validate, make their first data upload. The second phase will come after this, with the validation area going live and the first validation happening with about 20 validators already committed to use our platform. Mainnet is a small step compared to the decades and centuries we want to help support and sustain these forests, but it is a thrilling step nonetheless. The future will be open, and let us open it together. Thank you so much.